One car on this week's Bring a Trailer board sold for $45,540 below the Classic.com average. The largest market gap among this week's 7 vehicles. That sounds like the easiest steal I could hand you, except I'm calling it conditional because the reason it was cheap may be sitting underneath the car. Keep that in mind. We'll come back to the exact comment that changes the math after the first few verdicts. I'm Rudy Samsel, co-founder of GuysWithRides, the trusted dealer-free resource for car enthusiasts. This is Steal or Bad Deal, where I pick 7 vehicles that hammered at no reserve for $15,000 or less on Bring a Trailer, and then judge them as either a steal, a bad deal, or conditional based on their respective Classic.com average and other factors. The car in question is a 1959 Volkswagen Karmann Ghia lowlight. Stick around and I'll show you exactly what a VW specialist in the Bring a Trailer comments caught. Keep watching after that, because later in the video I will take you through how 2 C4 Corvettes, despite achieving similar hammer prices, received wildly different ratings for me and why. Let's get into it. Pick 1, 1988 Jeep Comanche Pioneer. Hammer price, $5,100. Classic.com average, $13,456. Jeep only built the MJ Comanche for 6 years, from 1986 to 1992, sharing its unibody chassis and its bulletproof 4-liter inline-6 with the beloved XJ Cherokee, just wrapped around a pickup bed instead of either a 2-door or 4-door SUV. What sells me here is the ownership. The same owner for the past 32 years, adding barely 1,000 miles annually the entire time. It's 2-wheel drive, so you get that 4-liter inline-6 paired with a column-shifted automatic instead of a stick. A small ding, but not a deal breaker. The truck's out of California and just passed that state's notoriously strict emissions test. And while the factory air conditioning doesn't blow cold, every component's still in place if you ever want to fix it. The verdict? Steal. $5,100 for a 2-owner truck driven 1,000 miles a year for 3 decades, equipped with the desirable inline-6 engine everyone loves in the XJ Cherokee. This one's a steal, plain and simple. The kind of truck you buy to actually drive and use, not just to look at. Pick number 2. 2000 Saab 9.3 Viggen Convertible. Hammer price, $5,700. Classic.com average, $12,234. The name comes straight off of a Swedish fighter jet, the Saab 37 Viggen, and this was Saab's one properly quick 9.3, built for just 3 model years, 1999 through 2002, riding on a GM platform shared with cars like the Saturn L. Only 4,600 examples were built worldwide, and most of those were coupes, so a 5-speed convertible like this is genuinely rare. The 170,000 miles will scare some people off, but the way this car wore those miles matters more than the number. It presents as well-maintained, needing only a sagging headliner and some minor cosmetics addressed. I've never met a Viggen owner who didn't love the car. Here's my actual hesitation. Saab ceased automotive production in 2011. Consequently, parts and the specialists who know these cars both get scarcer every year. That's a real cost curve, even if it isn't on today's invoice. Half the market average buys one of the rarest Saab 9.3s ever built, but only if you've already got a plan for keeping it fed with parts 5 years out. The verdict? Conditional. This one's conditional, and the reason has nothing to do with the car today and everything to do with keeping it running 5 years from now. Know your specialist and parts supplier before you bid. Pick number 3, 1972 Cadillac Fleetwood Brougham. Hammer price, $5,900. Classic.com average, $21,106. By 1972, the Fleetwood Brougham sat at the top of Cadillac's lineup. A full body-on-frame, a 472 cubic inch V8, and enough interior room to host a small dinner party. These were built to be driven 100,000 miles by one careful owner and handed down, which is exactly what happened here. The current caretaker bought this car in 1982 with only 62 miles on the odometer. and only the second owner in its life. The owner's grandson listed it on Bring a Trailer on his behalf, and by his own admission, it hasn't been registered in the past decade. It's been sitting in his grandparents' garage. But listen to the seller's own words. AC works, windows and locks work, vehicle starts, runs, and drives, and brakes well. That's a running, driving, working car. The problem here isn't the Cadillac, it's the listing. Nobody bothered to detail it before the photos went up, and the grandson was slow to answer questions in the comments. I'm convinced one Saturday with a bucket and a chamois would have doubled the hammer price on this car. An 82,000-mile, two-owner survivor that drives and stops fine, sold for a third of what a properly presented listing would have brought. The car did the work, the photos didn't. The verdict? Steal. An 82,000-mile, two-owner survivor that drives and stops just fine, sold for a third of what a properly presented listing would have brought. The car did the work, the photos didn't. This one's a steal, and it's a masterclass in the difference between bad photography and bad condition. Before we get back to today's final four picks, here's what this week's broader Bring a Trailer data tells us and why it matters to the prices we just looked at. Bring a Trailer ran 1,129 total auctions this week, with 424 of them, or 37.6%, going no reserve. That's worth a beat because I've been tracking this number for over a month now. There's no rhyme or reason, still bouncing around the same high 30s to mid 40s band with no real trend to report. Overall sell-through came in at 78.7%, but the no reserve number is the one that jumps out. 99.3% sold. This week's no reserve median, however, did tick up slightly to $14,125. And one number that isn't a trend, just a headline. This week's top sale on Bring a Trailer was a 3,800-mile 2018 Porsche 911 GT2 RS Weissach, which hammered for $707,500. A completely different universe than our 7, but worth knowing it happened. Now back to the vehicles. Pick number 4, 1959 Volkswagen Karmann Ghia. Hammer price, $14,000. Classic.com average, $59,540. This is it, the car from the top of the show, 76% under the average market value. And here's exactly why that number doesn't make it a slam dunk. Volkswagen produced Karmann Ghia coupes from 1955 through 1974. But the earliest cars, built through 1959, built before the taillight screw and the trim change, are what collectors call the lowlights. And they carry a real premium over later years. Underneath that Italian design body are humble Beetle mechanicals, which is exactly why these have stayed so usable and so collectible for 70 years. This one reads like a dealer flip, and the comments back that up. A noted VW specialist in the Bring a Trailer comments flagged replacement floors, a rough lower front apron, incorrect interior pieces, and a non-original engine. That's 4 separate originality flags on a car whose entire value. What makes this one interesting isn't that it's perfect. Far from it. It's that 2026 is a rare moment where you can actually make money on a Karmann Ghia after a proper restoration. My own move would be simple. Replace the janky 6-volt underhood wiring harness, pull the aftermarket fuel filter, and drive it as is, knowing it isn't going to go down in value from here. The verdict? Conditional. The 76% price gap is real, and so are the floors underneath it. Pick number 5, 67,000-mile 2000 Porsche Boxster base 5-speed. Hammer price, $15,000. Classic.com average, $14,257. Porsche launched the Boxster in 1996 as Porsche's first mid-engine roadster since the 914, and it's arguably the car that saved the company. Early cars ran a 2.5-liter flat 6 with a dual-row intermediate shaft bearing. During the 1999 model year, Porsche had switched to a 2.7-liter with a single-row bearing. That's the design behind most of the internet's IMS panic. When that bearing fails, it doesn't mean a repair bill. It can mean a full engine replacement, not rebuild. Full disclosure, I own a 1998 with the safer dual row setup, and my car currently has 118,000 on it. The car featured here, single row bearing, hasn't been replaced, and the selling dealer mentioned it should be really bundled with a clutch and rear main seal job, but was casual about the timeline. Exactly the wrong tone for a low mileage example like this one. When I first saw the price, I assumed that the service was already done. It wasn't. The verdict? Bad deal. Paying above market for a base Boxster that still needs its biggest, most expensive service isn't a premium for condition. It's a bill you haven't paid yet, and on this engine, that bill can be a big one. This one's a bad deal, because behind that above market price is a bill most buyers are not budgeting for. The last two cars in this week's video are both C4 Corvettes that sold only $1,000 apart, and they're a perfect lesson in why the spec sheet matters more than the badge. Pick number 6, an 18,000-mile 1987 Chevrolet C4 Corvette Z51 4-speed. Hammer price, $14,000. Classic.com average, $12,149. 1987 sat in the middle of the C4's run, and the Z51 package was Chevrolet's answer for anyone who actually wanted to use the handling, featuring stiffer suspension, quicker steering, bigger brakes. Pair that with the Tuneport Injection 350 and the notoriously odd Doug Nash 4+3 manual that was a 4-speed with an electric overdrive bolted on, and you've got the enthusiast C4 Corvette. This is an 18,000-mile survivor in red over red, about as good as it gets for the era. The factory air conditioning was converted to R134 in 2022, and yes, it needs a recharge now and then. A minor known quirk, not a flaw. I've driven several 4+3 C4 Corvettes, and I'd take the 3 pedals and a quirky overdrive over the typical automatic every time. This is a legitimate AACA and NCRS survivor candidate, and if the buyer chases those awards, they're playing with house money. The verdict? Steal. On paper, this car sold for nearly $2,000 above the market average, but this isn't an average Z51. It's got the desirable manual transmission, just 18,000 miles, a great color combination, and the condition to justify the premium. You're not paying average money for an average car. Pick number 7, a 30,000-mile 1996 Chevrolet C4 Corvette Collector Edition. Hammer price, $15,000. Classic.com average, $17,193. 1996 marked the C4's last year on the production line, and Chevrolet sent it off with not one but 2 special editions. The track-focused Grand Sport and the more luxurious Collector Edition. Both could be had with the 1-year-only LT4, a 330-horsepower small block reserved exclusively for 6-speed manual cars. That's the catch here. This Collector Edition wears a genuinely striking red leather over silver combination, but it's backed by an automatic transmission, which means it's running the standard 300 horsepower LT1, not the special LT4. Unfortunately, Classic.com's average blends both engines together, and the manual LT4 cars pull that number up considerably. So this car really isn't being measured against its true peer group. Had this exact car come with a 6-speed instead of the slush box, I'd be calling it a steal. The verdict? Bad deal. A 30,000-mile Collector Edition with a gorgeous red leather interior, but without the LT4 Collector Edition's engine, is still a good car, just not the car its name and its price are implying. Same badge as our steal from a minute ago. Opposite verdict, because the spec sheet says something different. That's 7 for this week. 3 steals, 2 conditionals, 2 bad deals. But the number I want you to sit with is this one. Our cold open car, that 76% gap, still only earned a conditional, while a Corvette that sold above market earned a steal. The percentage never tells you what you're actually buying. So here's the debate. Which one would you have actually bought? The 76% below market Karmann Ghia or the higher confidence Corvette C51? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every one. How many of you have a classic or collector car sitting in the garage right now that you know you should sell? I wrote a guide to fix exactly that. 5 modules: rating, pricing, venue, photography, and a 90-point inspection checklist. $19.99. One time. Not a subscription, not a course. Just the actual information you need. Scan the QR code or use the links in the description